that the hospital is not an adequate safety net for mortality. It's not. If we're going to make any inroads on reducing COVID-19 mortality and save human lives, it's going to be in the early outpatient phase. We cannot load all of our interventions at the very end in the hospital. So let's talk about the role of early ambulatory treatment. The first standard that we've been stuck on in terms of approval of drugs is proven efficacy and acceptable safety. Well, we would need 2 large concordant randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials, and the drug development pathway, as you can see, could be about 10 years. We don't have that period of time. We needed these randomized trials within the first month or two. The only hope would have been if the big governments who had the stockpiles, let's say the US, the UK, and a few other countries, if they simply would have done large hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin clinical trials, potentially multi-drug clinical trials very early on in ambulatory outpatients, could we have met standard number 1? We can't meet it. Right now, we've run out of time. We have to move on to standard number 2, which is a reasonable chance of success with emergency use, with the use of multiple drugs, with well-characterized safety. As long as we have some observational and randomized trials of available drugs alone or in combination with some signals of benefit and acceptable safety, in my view, as an emergency global response, that is going to be good enough. That's good enough. And what's on the table is the use of hydroxychloroquine, the best studied therapeutic that we have. It reduces endosomal entry of the virus into human cells and has a universal positive studies that tend in the positive direction when it's used early in the outpatient phase. Ivermectin, which is a broad scale antiparasitic that impairs the viral entry into the nucleus, has lesser mass of published studies, but it's approximately a dozen papers or so, observational studies and a few randomized trials that show signals of benefit. The dose is 200 micrograms per kilogram, and we don't know for how many days, 1 day, 3 days, or longer, we don't know. Favipiravir, this is an oral RNA-dependent polymerase inhibitor. It's like an oral remdesivir. It's available and approved in 30 countries for early outpatient use, has acceptable safety profile. For this middle phase of cytokine storm, the use of prednisone, the most widely available oral steroid medication. In my view, it doesn't have to be dexamethasone. Dexamethasone is a glucocorticoid, and it was studied in an odd dose in the recovery trial at 6 milligrams a day, which is the equivalent of about 40 milligrams of prednisone, but it's short acting. And dexamethasone, in the dexamethasone group in the recovery trial, the mortality rate was still 22.9%, unacceptably high. In my view, treat it like asthma and use oral prednisone. The use of colchicine was studied in a Greek study, 1 tablet twice a day for 3 days, and then once a day thereafter. It's been studied in a large clinical trial. The use of aspirin, but I advise at 325 milligrams, not 81, because of market activation of thromboxane A2, that's been studied. And lastly, the use of oral anticoagulants, and we have novel oral anticoagulants. Here's one picture to Pixaban. One can use subcutaneous low molecular weight heparin. This would be kind of the products that are available that could be used in an organized way. Hydroxychloroquine, as I've mentioned, is far and away the most studied. Those countries that are widely using hydroxychloroquine have a much lower death rate per million population. Now, granted, some of these countries have much younger age profiles, but those countries that are not using hydroxychloroquine on a broad basis are doing much more poorly with without the use of hydroxychloroquine. It's becoming really desperate in many of these countries. Here's the meta-analysis of the randomized trials available for early outpatient use. This has been in preprint form. And you can see here there are 5 trials, 2 more have been completed, and we've checked it. The point estimate doesn't change. Hydroxychloroquine in prospective randomized clinical trials as an outpatient has a 24% risk reduction in the development of new COVID-19 infection, hospitalization, or death. This is the best data we have. All of these trials were relatively stopped early.
Hello. Hello. Hello, Dr. Peter.
I am not listening, nothing.
I think Dr. Peter, yeah, Peter, you're back. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to really move here
Yes.
because I lost some time.
Yeah.
So here's the first published guidance on the treatment of outpatient COVID-19. It's a multi-center collaboration published in the American Journal of Medicine, August 7th issue, updated in the Proceedings of the Baylor University Medical Center to be released in the next few days. And here's the algorithm. Age under 50, no treatment needed, just self-quarantine at home. Age over 50 or with comorbidities, begin with some helpful supplements, zinc sulfate, vitamin D3, and I would add to that vitamin C, and then immediately move with 2 off-target antiviral agents, hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin, ivermectin plus azithromycin, or favipiravir, again with one of these antibiotics. The antibiotics are slightly antiviral and help with treat other respiratory bacterial pathogens. If respiratory symptoms develop on day 5 or day 5 of illness, prednisone 1 milligram per kilogram for 5 days. Colchicine could be added to that. Aspirin 325 milligrams per day in everybody. And then higher risk patients, go ahead and systemically anticoagulate. The shortest duration of symptoms, the shortest duration of treatment in published studies, 5 days. The longest duration, 30 days. And we can deliver home oxygen, pulse oximetry, and reevaluate and hospitalize if needed. These medications are largely available worldwide, but it's a multi-drug sequenced approach. This is what's done in the hospital anyway. The tools may be a bit different, the drugs may be different, but the same principles. Early antiviral therapy, corticosteroids for cytokine storm, and then drugs to treat the hypercoagulable state and thrombosis. Here are a few sample kits available worldwide in 3 states in Brazil, Salvador, Guatemala, and India. The world is moving on home treatment. Yes, this is my second last slide. The American Association of Physicians and Surgeons has published a home guide. This was just released a few days ago. This is available online. It outlines all the principles that I've mentioned. To finish and conclude, COVID-19 pandemic is a global disaster. Despite contagion control, the outbreaks are worsening. Hospitalization and late treatment is an inadequate safety net. We need early home treatment with sequenced multi-drug regimen that has a reasonable chance of success and a well-characterized safety profile. In my view, it's the only hope in this dire hour of reducing hospitalization and death. And moreover, it may buy us some time until we can get to mass vaccination or herd immunity. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much for your session, Mr. Peter. So I request fellow speakers and other colleagues have any questions, you can ask now to Peter McCullough now.
No, I have one question. It's just because I didn't see your few last slides. For me was out. I don't know it's for everyone, but it was not showing the last.
It's for everyone. It's for everyone.
So nobody saw the last few slides from
Oh,
Dr.
I'm so
Peter.
sorry because I had to reshare my screen. Yeah, my internet cut out. I am so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
I know what you're saying, but you probably, I'll just put this up while you ask your question. Again, I sincerely apologize.
Okay.
This algorithm, by the way, it's freely available to anybody. I've made it online through a whole variety of sources. I own the publication to it and I'm free to distribute it. This is very important. In many of you, this is the biggest chance to save lives worldwide. The hospital's not going to do it in these efforts of trying to contain the spread hasn't worked. We need this treatment.
It is very interesting, your data. And my question is, what do you think is the best way to treat COVID-19? Like, imagine that you have a patient that has just diagnosed with COVID-19. What do you think is the best? It's just because here in Brazil, in São Paulo city, as far as I know, they just tell you, okay, take azithromycin and corticoid like dexamethasone for 2 weeks or 1 week. After they do like an exam to detect if you have thrombosis, and if you have thrombosis, they treat you home with to treat that. And only in a few cases that progressed for a severe case, they hospitalized. This is the way, as far as I know, they are doing here in São Paulo city. But what is your opinion?
But that's interesting. São Paulo is a huge city. I've been there myself, and they're using the same principles here, and something antiviral, corticosteroids, and to address thrombosis. So what they're doing in São Paulo, and what doctors have figured this out worldwide, is they're following the principles. You can hear me coughing. I can tell you I'm on my 10th day of COVID-19, and I'm on my 8th day of treatment. So I have it myself right now. So I'll tell you what I did is I followed this box up here with, and I don't know if the vitamins and supplements make a difference or not, but I did it. And then I worked here. I just finished taking, I just took my hydroxychloroquine this morning. We have it available in the United States. And I tell you, when I had a fever and I was coughing, shortness of breath, I thought the hydroxychloroquine had the biggest impact of all. 200 milligrams twice a day. I'm going to go for a 10-day course. And I also have azithromycin, but I could have used doxycycline. I never had to get to the prednisone step. I had it ready, but I didn't have to get there because I treated it so early. And so I can tell you, my fever went away in about 3 days, and I was able to return to exercising in 6 days. In fact, I shot a YouTube video where I was able to jog about 6 miles on the 6th day. But it's all early. Shut that viral replication down before it does too much damage in the body.
Okay, thank you very much. And I hope you'll be very good and better from the COVID-19.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really becoming desperate now. And I'm so afraid that if we don't institute mass home treatment like India and some of the countries are doing, I'm afraid our hospitals are going to be overrun because I'm 57 and I have asthma, but I'm in pretty good shape. The older people with medical problems, they're not going to stand a chance without home treatment.
I can imagine. Yeah, I agree completely.